Hi, everybody. This is Teresa with the Lower Columbia Canoe Club, and we are here to explain the ins and outs of being a trip coordinator for the club. And people get all worried about coordinating for the club, and what they don't realize is that we're all just boaters, and we're showing each other our rivers. So it's not that complicated, but there are a few things to know, and I'm going to show you a presentation if I can find it. This is the slow part. I don't want to share that. And of course, the screen share blocks what I'm trying to share. Hey, all right, can you guys see this?
Yep.
Yep.
And I should have been at the beginning, but I was editing when I started. So anyway, this is the Lower Columbia Canoe Club's way of doing things. Every club is different. So if you're a member of a different club, you should check into how they do it. An overview of what we'll talk about. What is a trip coordinator? What are the qualifications in preparation? How to choose the river? How to post a trip? And a lot of sort of smaller details about how a trip goes. What is a trip coordinator? Well, in this case of this photograph, it's that guy in the blue, and he spent months emailing back and forth with people trying to make this trip happen where they did the East Fork of the Owyhee for 7 days. So sometimes coordinating a trip takes a lot of work, and sometimes it's pretty easy. But basically, we're all just boaters, so it's a paddler who decides to initiate a trip, and they pick the river. They have an idea of what conditions they're interested in, and they're looking for a crew. And that could be you as a participant, or it could be you as a coordinator. This is the needle we're trying to thread. We want to make sure that everybody on the trip has the right qualifications so that we have good trips, but we also cannot legally tell people whether or not they can do this. So the trip coordinator is legally not responsible for anything the other person does, including the choice to go or not go, run that rapid or not run that rapid, or anything else, or bring the wrong boat. But what trip coordinators can do is help facilitate good decisions. They can help people figure out if this is the right boat or the wrong boat, the right day or the wrong day. It helps a lot if you're a pretty good boater, at least a good enough boater that the section that you propose to do is not a big challenge. And that way you're more able to show it to other people without too much stress. We don't require that trip coordinators have any particular certifications. Some clubs do, we don't. But we love it if you have some CPR, swiftwater know-how, wilderness first responder, that kind of thing. It does require that you are able to post on the listserv and answer people's questions and communicate with people and explain what's going on. And that's easy for some people and hard for others. Logistical skills, of course. And the last one, you got to be willing to ask for help. If you don't know something, then ask somebody, because there are a lot of us that have a lot of knowledge about the local rivers and also about paddlers in our group. And if you don't know somebody, you can ask about them. And here's how you can reach some of us. You see the bottom line there. The board members can be reached at that Gmail. So that's a good place to start. And the other place to start is to look up somebody that you have met in the members only area. There's a club roster with everybody's, not everybody's, but most people's telephone numbers and email addresses. So if you're thinking you want to coordinate a trip, the first thing you do is kind of figure out where you want to go and make sure you're familiar with it. Make sure you know where you're going. And if you haven't done it before, some trip coordinators are so bold as to post exploratory missions, but most people will want to go run it before they lead a group down it. So either way, as long as you're very clear about what you're doing. And then you plan meeting spots, figure out how long it takes to do everything. Make sure you leave enough time for the dithering that inevitably happens in the parking lot. It's like, Will thinks it's going to be 15 minutes, but it's a half hour every time. And then before you go on the river, you tell the people who have responded to you that they want to go. You don't tell everybody in the whole club where you're going. And the reason why is because you'd rather not have a lot of random people showing up that you don't even know who they are. You'd rather have people that you've already talked to showing up for your trip. And so if you just send it to the folks who've already gotten back to you that they're interested and you've checked out their credentials, then you're happy. You will need to figure out how to get people to sign waivers. And it doesn't hurt at all to read the member handbook. It gives a good sense of club operations. According to our insurance, we can really only run trips on up to Class 3 whitewater. If there are Class 4 rapids, they have to be incidental, like Hewsome on the middle white salmon, because you can easily take out above it. You definitely don't have to run it. And any Class 5s have to be portageable. You can't do a club trip on a Class 5 run. The little white salmon is not happening for the Lower Columbia Canoe Club. It's important to figure out what your range of optimal flows is. You want to know if the water's high or low before you go. And so figure out what the right parameters are, and then be willing to cancel if the river comes up outside of your parameters. If it gets too high, or if it drops out too low, or if the road is closed, you either redirect or cancel, and either one is fine. Here's the details on how to post a trip. Usually, most of us post by email. It's listed there. It's a Google group that everyone who joins the club can be on, and most people are, because that's the main communication channel for this club. There's also a Facebook group where you can post. I don't know that people are using it a lot yet, but it could come into use. You could adopt it, and you could be the person who posts on Facebook if you want. I would still advise you, if you were doing that, not to tell people the time and place where you're meeting on Facebook, because you might end up with a lot of strangers showing up. So the first post is when you propose a run. I want to paddle something this weekend. And then when you get enough people responding to you and you have a plan, you post again and you say, this trip is a go, and we're going to go to the middle white salmon on Saturday. And then you send the final information to only the folks in your group. And I have some tips down in here that are kind of important. Get confirmations from people that they're coming or not coming. That way you know who's coming. Very helpful. And keep a list and bring the list with you so that you can check it at the meet spot. Is everybody here? Because I forget people. I need a list. Expect people to add in and drop out like within hours of launching. It's very common. And so just mark them off your list and keep going. And ask people if they're bringing anyone else, because that way you'll know if there's going to be an extra, and you can get them to sign the waivers before they show up. That's far easier than doing the pen on the hood in the rain. Far easier to do it online before you leave home. You do need to carry printed waivers to the put in with you, because some people, like myself, will just show up and beg to go on a club trip not knowing anything. And then nice people will let you go if you do that. Let's see. Yeah, we have to do waivers. If we don't do waivers, we won't have a club. We won't be covered. Our insurance won't cover us, and the whole project is over. So we're doing waivers, and we're doing them right. If you don't know somebody and you want to get them to fill out the waiver, you can get them to verify it by sending you a screenshot of having signed it. It's the same waiver for everybody. And the link can be found if you go to the Lower Columbia Canoe Club website, scroll all the way to the bottom, and that's where the link to the waiver is. It's pretty easy to find. Oh yeah, and this next bit is about how to print them. You may not need this yet, but come back to it if you do need it. The secret is, and I have done this experiment, is to print it with 2 sheets per page on a 2-sided page. And this way you get the whole waiver, which is not formatted for printing very well. You get the whole thing on one piece of paper, and that's kind of important for legal reasons because they're going to sign it. So a signature on one side, all the information on the same page, you're golden. How do I get out of here? So I talked about threading this needle before, how we would like to sort through participants in order to have good trips, but legally we can't tell people not to come. So this is the trickiest part of being a trip leader, is figuring out how to sort and make sure that your group is going to have the right skills for the day. And, officially you can refuse anyone for safety or equipment concerns. But if you turn away one person and then you don't turn away person B and then person B drowns, that sets you up for a bad legal situation. So rather than refusing anyone in a forcible way, it makes sense to just sort of assess and guide and try to get the right paddlers on your trip and try and divert the paddlers that shouldn't be there to a different trip. And there's a whole process. You would interview them, ask them all the questions, check their equipment, ask them about it, ask them how much they've been out. And if you end up with a huge group of beginners, which is a wonderful thing, you probably will need a few veteran paddlers to come along and help support that, because one person really can't rescue everybody. And the class 1 paddlers might not be rescuing each other yet. This is what happens if somebody in your group is having a really bad day, is you can end up with pinned boats, injuries, all kinds of messes, and your days can get super long and not anywhere near as much fun as if you were moving downstream easily, if it was comfortable. So that's what we're going for. Let's see, I've already said this. Send details only to confirmed participants. I keep a list and then I build a draft email where I start plugging in the email addresses of everybody that said they're interested. And I don't send it until as late as I can push it off, because there's always more people showing up. Let's see, confirm everything, confirm the meeting spots. Some folks will want to meet at the river if they live close to the river, and that's great because then they can be the takeout car. So at the end of the day, all the drivers can use their car to get back up and fetch all the cars that went to the put-in. So that's fine if folks want to meet at different places. So carpooling is something that we do in order to reduce our carbon footprint and also to make paddling less expensive. And the Canoe Club has a specific reimbursement rate for drivers. If you drive to the river on a Canoe Club trip with people in your car, then this 40 cents per mile is going to get split among everyone riding in the car, including you. So if you've got 3 people riding in the car, it gets split 3 ways. And so you figure out what the total is, you figure out what the miles are, you multiply it and get your total amount of money, split it among all the people, and you're good. And this keeps drivers from shouldering the burden for bringing their good car that carries a lot of boats and people, it keeps it from being a hardship. It's an okay reimbursement rate. It's more than the price of gas, less than the price of owning a car. Let's see. At the meeting spot, this is an important moment, really, when you're at the park and ride or the Fred Meyer parking lot or wherever it is that you're meeting up with the group, and you've got your list in your hand and everybody shows up. You figure out your shuttle right then and there. So you load up the best gear hauler cars with the most boats and people so they can just go to the put-in and figure it out from there. And it's also a good place to turn anybody away that shouldn't be there. It's pretty important to not get them all the way to the put-in before you assess them. So if there's anybody that looks out of place, this is a good time to talk to them, make sure they understand what you're doing. If they've got the wrong kind of boat, send them home or send them to a different river. And then caravanning is pretty standard, but not necessary once everybody knows where they're going. The shuttling can be confusing to newcomers. I can't tell you how many times I've been on club trips where people didn't know to put their shoes in the takeout car or they forgot to. So kind of guide people a little bit, give them a little help about everything, and definitely check on keys. If the keys are in the wrong vehicle at the end of the day, that lengthens your day as well. So small things like that can make a difference in the flow of your day. One thing that people get anxious about is having to be the speaker for a trip talk. Before we launch, we all get in a big circle and we talk about things. It doesn't have to be a super formal thing, and it can be delegated. You can be like, Joe, you give a safety talk. I'll be over here. and it's fine. He won't care. He'll be happy to do it. But what we usually do is introduce ourselves, maybe go around the circle and everybody say something. People have funny games to play for meeting each other. Wonderful. Do it. Do your games. If you don't do games, I'm not a big game person. That's okay too. I like to ask people, what have you brought group gear wise? Like, have you got a spare paddle? Have you got a first aid kit? Have you got a throw bag? Have you got a whistle? We require that everyone has a life jacket and a helmet. That's, baseline. And a dry suit is pretty important too. But then we kind of talk about how the day is going to go. How long is this run? What do we expect? Are we going to have a lunch? All these things get discussed. And then the safety plan, I'll talk about that more on the next page, but the safety plan is a part of the trip talk that we're emphasizing more these days. Personal responsibility is actually part of the safety plan because everybody makes their own decisions. And that kind of keeps people from blaming someone else when things don't go their way. You can repeat to people that they don't have to help rescue each other. They don't have to do anything. Everything is optional in this game. So the decision of to chase after a boat or that sort of thing is really an individual decision, and not everybody will be ready for it, and that has to be okay. So the safety plan is required by insurance. We have to have one, and we like to say it out loud before each trip. And the generic plan is that if something doesn't go well for us, if we can't get ourselves out of some problem that we've gotten ourselves into, we're gonna get to cell coverage, which might mean hiking out, flagging down a car, doing whatever you've got to do to get to a place where you can call 911, and then telling, the responders where we are and what the situation is. Or these days, there's also a lot of people who carry inReaches, and if there really is a severe injury or a fatality, that will get used. We are required to have a sweep boat. That is the boat that goes last and makes sure that no one gets left behind. And that person is vulnerable because they're by themselves at the back of the pack. And so we are very aware of that. And when a person volunteers to be sweep boat, we like to have others volunteer to look out for them. We like to have co-sweeps, not required, only the sweep is required. Let's see. Oh yeah, reviewing river signals. I like to review river signals. There's the jokey ones, jerky. And there's the I'm okay, you're okay. And you just go through whatever it is, however you're going to communicate visually with your crew, go over it, make sure people understand it, recognize it, are looking for it. And if someone's uncertain or has questions, this is the time to talk about it, because if anybody is really afraid or underskilled, this is a great time for them to bail. They can still run shuttle. They can take pictures. They can do lots of things instead of paddling if they get to the put-in and it's not a good option for them. So we like to be very clear about the moment when your decision becomes very committing. And sometimes it's when you go into a canyon, and sometimes it's when the shuttle vehicle leaves. But whatever the case, you want to try and get those decisions made before then. On the river, we try to keep the group together. It's not an easy project. It does require sort of an accordion process where the group gathers up and then it spreads out, and it gathers up and it spreads out. But it's the people in the front who make it possible for the group to stay together, because if they just keep going downstream and don't ever wait for the back end of the pack, they won't know if something happened back there. And so the people in the front need to regularly slow down and make sure that everyone is coming and everyone is good before they head out. What to do if there's an incident? Well, you do the best you can in the situation, whatever it is, and you do your safety plan, whether it's get to a mobile reception and call 911, or maybe you had a more detailed plan for some run that you were going to do, but you do your safety plan. And then Once you get back to town, you report it to someone in the board, and you kind of keep tabs on the folks who were involved, the people who were there, anyone who was injured. Just stay in touch with them, make sure they know that you're there. Try not to talk to anyone on the television or the radio, or don't make it a big public issue. Let it be private. And cooperate with the safety chair, because these kind of incidents can be used as educational tools for future trainings. There's only one requirement, and that is to send the trip roster to the day trips chair. And right now that's Dave Johnson, after a trip. And you have your list of who went, and you put a mark next to the name of whoever is not a club member, and send that to him, and with the date and where he went, and you're done. We paddlers would also really appreciate it if you would report any new river hazards to us or to the river community in the broader sense, so that we all know that there's a new log across at some place or whatever else is going on. And I'm the newsletter editor currently, and I would love it if you wrote a trip report. Not required, but send it if you want to, or send a picture. And then you get to bask in the glow. You get to make new friends, you gain status in the community, and you get better at leading. It's very good practice to do this for the club, and we really appreciate it. We love to go on trips when other folks will show us their river. So thanks a lot. In the next 3 slides are a bunch of links, and I'm just going to show them for a while so you can take a screenshot of it if you would like. And if you guys that are here listening, Chris and Will, have any questions or comments, I would love to hear them now.
I have one comment.
Yeah.
Who's going first?
Go ahead, Will.
Okay. In terms of trips with a lot of maybe underskilled boaters or marginally skilled boaters, and having safety boaters go with you to help take care of things that come up. Some clubs actually require to have a certain ratio of safety boaters. And you didn't really talk about like how many to bring, but I think it's something that people should take seriously and make sure, you know, that they're feeling comfortable with the number of safety boaters that they're asking to come along and have coming along, so that if something does happen, the swimmer or the swimmers can all be taken care of at the same time.
Good point. What were you thinking, Chris?
I was wondering, are there minimum age requirements for participants on these trips?
That's a good question. I don't even know the answer. Do you, Will?
I believe children are allowed to come as well. I don't think
Oh, I know. I remember. If there's a parent or guardian along, they can go underage, but otherwise, they need to be of age. So 18.
18. Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
unless there's a parent or guardian or somebody looking out for them.
Yes, and I noticed that the waiver that every participant is supposed to sign also has a checkbox for minors as well. So,
Mhm.
and then I had another question. You mentioned some pieces of equipment that are required. I think it's a whistle and a throw rope. You might have mentioned that you should have those things, but
Yeah, you definitely should. I don't know that they're required, but we'll shame you into carrying them. So bring them.
Exactly. I think I had another question. About planning. So you said to let someone know how the trip went. Let the I forget who you said was the board member who's
Dave Johnson.
Dave Johnson. So are you supposed to make sure somebody knows prior to a trip that the trip is occurring?
That would be a very wise thing. Yeah, if you post it to the email list, then there'll be multiple members that'll be inquiring as to whether you made it back. But it doesn't hurt. There's not a club rule about it, but it's very intelligent to do as you suggest.
Agreed.
Yeah, the second email that you sent out to people who are interested is, this trip is a go. So that kind of alerts a lot of people that are checking their club emails that the trip is happening and it's going to take place.
Mm-hmm.
I have another comment.
Excellent.
Under the shuttling on a trip, if you're meeting at a spot that's before you get to the river and you're trying to figure out how many cars to take, always make sure to take an extra car because you will need to leave one at the takeout before you drive up to put in. I mean, people know this who have done it, so maybe it's not an important point, but for the newbies, get help in arranging the shuttle if you don't have an idea of really what needs to happen. And if you don't have anybody there who knows any more than you do, make sure that you remember to leave a car at the takeout.
Yeah. I'm hoping that the folks that are bold enough to want to coordinate trips are going to be able to figure out the shuttles. Because it is the hard part.